Welcome to Astrology Online. I'm very happy that I can present you the knowledge of traditional astrology, which leads more so into evolutionary astrology, a word that got quite famous by the author and astrologer Geoffrey Green, who I was blessed to learn from. And evolutionary astrology is a very beautiful, virtuous form of applying astrology. Well, astrology in a common sense is very often just used for practical worldly issues. But in a much deeper meaning, the astrology gives a beauty when we look at it from a point of view of previous life dynamics. Even if one does not believe in previous lives, the archetypal dynamics symbolized in a chart by the signs, the level of the planets and the level of the houses, and further on the aspects, are a symbolism of the subconscious memories of the so-called soul of previous incarnations in the time-space universe. That explains also why someone has certain talents and someone else does not have those talents. Or, as Paramahansa Yogananda said, why is one born as a cripple and the other one as a genius? And there's no other explanation that there is the ongoing journey of the soul in diverse incarnations. And those incarnations are basically, if we look very deeply from a spiritual point of view, nothing but the dream of the real soul. So I discriminate between the real soul or self and that part of that real self that we in the world call soul, which is that part that started to fall into the dream or fall asleep and dreams the dream and believes the dream to be real. For this part, simply for my ego or for your ego, astrology is a very helpful map to figure out who you are, where you've been coming from a point of view of time and space journey, and where you're heading towards to in this life. Because for some people, it might be important that you want to learn to be more social, more compassionate. Whereas another person that had been doing that in many, many lifetimes, to the extent that an archetype was manifested, the archetype which correlates with Libra, the archetype of I need to be needed, is overly emphasized, so that other person is now in need in this incarnation to learn, quote unquote learn, to become independent and to rely more on oneself. But we will get to that when we go through that, what I call the journey of the zodiac, meaning we will go through each sign of the 12 signs of the zodiac and explain astro-logically their meaning, or as we say, their archetypes. But before that, going back to the whole idea of evolutionary astrology, there's one statement by the teacher of Paramahansa Yogananda. His name was Swami Surukdeshwar, a very enlightened, beautiful, wonderful soul, very wise, and also an astrologer. And he made the statement that a soul incarnates. When I say soul, I mean that part of the self that dreams to be an ego and to incarnate in diverse incarnations in a body. So he said when a soul incarnates, the planetary constellations of the moment of place and time of birth are the symbolic reflection of the individual karma and the most likely direction for the further development or evolution / orientation. So what that means is the moment a baby is born, no matter if it's a C-section or a natural birth, the moment the baby is born, the outer symbolism in the sky by the planets shows in symbolic language what the person has, so to speak, or the soul has, so to speak, as subconscious memories, talents, fears, or abilities on their soul chip card. And those subconscious memories will then, by parental, social, religious imprint, be, so to speak, reactivated. So the whole childhood and uprising, like to become an adult, is nothing than to reignite the old memories on the chip card in the new physical form of a person, a personality, to get the person back in that culminated information of a culmination of previous life incarnations. That sounded quite complicated, but it's actually quite simple. So to get into that, one needs to understand the very basic of astrology first. And usually there are two ways to embrace astrology. The one that is very common by books, marketing, those kind of things, is the left brain form of understanding astrology. Meaning you look up a sign, then you flip in a book and you read, oh, that means that and that and that. But that is as if you would play a piano by just, oh, where's the C? C. Where's the D? Oh, there's the D. It's not virtuous. But life itself is virtuous. So therefore, I can only ask you to open up your mind, and not only from the logical or left brain, but also to the right brain, the intuitive, holistic form. That is why it's also important that when you start beginning to dive into the astrology, that you learn the astrological symbolism, meaning you don't write down Aries or Taurus in letters, but you use the symbols, because symbols are better understood by the right brain hemisphere. And the right brain hemisphere is very linked to the heart. So over time of practice, that you shall allow yourself to expand your consciousness, not only to learn things in a one-step two logic, but to expand to that what is called knowledge. Knowledge comes without learning. Knowledge is coming from the holistic side, and we perceive that from the right brain hemisphere, like the arts and everything. And astrology is an art, or for many, many centuries in ancient time, astrology was seen as the queen of science. Why? Because it actually creates a symbolism or a synthesis between the logic, the measurable things, i.e. Jupiter takes exactly 12 years to circle around the sun. That's logic, we can measure that, left brain. But what it means in a holistic meaning, that would be the right brain hemisphere. So what I'm trying to do throughout this whole video course is I'm inviting you to, on the one hand, learn those words, those keywords, those archetypes with your left brain, to then let them drop via the right brain into your heart of knowledge. That's the whole trick. There are usually two forms or two types of students. There are the left brainies and there are the right brainies. The left brainies always have the sense they don't know enough, they need to read another book, they need to look it up, those kind of things, which is very good. But they don't trust the right brain hemisphere. Well, it could be different. How should I know? I better I'm not ready. I need to do another class. The right brainies are very intuitive, even to the extent of being psychic. But some psychics, which is beautiful and I honor them, but some psychics lack of being with their feet on the ground. So the thin line between a psychic or intuitive knowledge and just a pure fantasy, wishful thinking is very clearly not definable. So for someone who feels that they're very intuitive, it is a necessity to study the keywords of astrology for you when you have intuitive insights looking at astrological symbolism, that while you get the insights from the symbolism, that you double check with the logic of your left brain if the words and images and intuitive senses that you pick up are in alignment with the symbolism in the given chart that you might do an analysis for. So that's basically what is to be said for the introduction. And what we're going to do is first we start as simple as possible. And that will be that we have, in every given chart, we have 3 levels. So every horoscope is basically, even if you have it on the piece of paper, 3 levels. There's the one level that we could see as the eternal level, which is symbolized by the 12 signs of the zodiac. Like out in the sky, we have fixed star constellations, And that part of the sky where the sun is going through, which we call the ecliptic, is called the zodiac. Of course, we know that the sun is not moving through the zodiac, but the planet Earth is moving around the sun. But as astrology is geocentric, like we are egocentric, like when I walk through life, I see everything regarding to my center. So the same thing about astrology. We look at astrology and we look from the worldly point of view, and from the worldly point of view, we see that the sun within a year is moving through the background of the fixed star constellations. And as that is every time happening on the same level, it's not going like wild, basically that part of the sky where from our geocentric point of view, we are seeing the sun circling, these 12 fixed star constellations are called the signs of the zodiac. Little footnote for the professional astrologers, there is a difference between the Eastern astrology and the Western astrology, the sidereal or tropical zodiac, but you can look that up. We in the Western world work with a tropical zodiac, meaning the moment when the sun is on the spring equinox at a certain point in the fixed star background, that's what we say this is where zero Aries starts. We call that the equinox point. And now I'm getting deeper into that, my apology. And that equinox point is actually moving very, very slowly counterclockwise. It's clockwise. Astrologers are always weird. Clockwise. So it's moving from Aries to Pisces to Aquarius to Capricorn, etc. in a very, very slow movement. Like it takes about 2,600 years plus minus for the spring equinox to travel through one fixed star background. And these kind of like travelings are called the ages. So we Western astrologers, when we say, okay, day and night are same length everywhere on the planet, that moment when it happens on midnight Greenwich time from the point of view of the Greenwich meridian, we project that point into the background of the fixed star constellations and we say this is Aries. Right now, that projected equinox point is still in Pisces, but already in Aquarius, because those two fixed star constellations in the sky from an astronomical point of view are overlapping. So the point is right in between. So we are still in the Pisces age, which is now coming to culmination to an end, and we are in the beginning of Aquarius age. That's why the world is so weird, let's put it this way, not to say wacko. Like once a student was asking me, why do we take like Greenwich time, midnight, and the Greenwich meridian and project it from there? Well, we do need a point of reference, and as we all know, God is British. So we go from the 0 point of Greenwich meridian. So that kind of zodiac, the 12 signs, is our very, very basis of every reference of our archetypes, keywords, dynamics, etc. But as we are born on this planet, we also have a worldly point of view, which is then seen by what we call the house system or the houses. Like, as you will see in the graphic here, the planet, due to its rotation, 24-hour rotation, we have time zones. Let's say in London there is like noon, but in New York it would be 5 o'clock in the morning because we have 5 hours time difference. Well, in London it's noon, that means the sun is high up in the sky, highest point, whereas in New York it would be still below the horizon. And that brings at the east horizon a different sign which is rising right now. That's why we call it the rising sign. Due to the Earth rotation in 24 hours around its own axis, North Pole, South Pole, we see the sky rotate from a point of view of a location, New York or London, that on the east something is rising and then it declines at the west horizon, which we call the descendant. So we have ascendant and descendant. We have the highest point of the zodiac, the so-called medium coeli, which means the middle of the sky. And opposite of it, we have the deepest point of the sky, the Imum Culi IC. And those 4 axes, as I always say, ACDC, MCIC, define the first 4 quarters relative to a place and time of an event, i.e. a birth. And these 4 quarters are then divided, each one in 3 segments that we call houses or fields. There are about 52 techniques how you could divide from the ascendant down to the IC in 3 segments. The most common ones are Placidus or Koch. But my opinion is that very many astrologers use Placidus or Koch because the others use it too. But if you ask them, why do you use them, what does it mean, they usually don't know. And actually it is quite complicated how those in-between houses, as you can call them too, these segments dividing the whole sky above and below New York or London into 12 segments, 6 above the horizon, 6 below. These are quite complicated. It has shown that in evolutionary astrology, it's highly recommendable that you use another ancient Egyptian house system, and that is called Porphyry. Porphyry is quite simple, and simplicity is always the key to truth. So what we do is we basically divide the segment of the ascendant to the IC, calculate the distance, that could be 90 degrees, it could be 120 degrees. Not Fahrenheit, but degrees. And you basically take that distance and divide it by 3. So each house in those first quarter would have the same size. And that has shown that when you do past life interpretations of a chart, that this is actually working best from a point of view of the archetypes. But of course you can do as ever you want to. So the point is we have 2 levels. We have the universal level with the archetypes. Similar, imagine the divine would have 12 ingredients boxes in its kitchen. In his kitchen, her kitchen, its kitchen, right? These would be the 12 signs. And they are there. They are the given ingredients for life in general, right? But if you cook a steak, you need different ingredients than when you do I don't know, a pork roast, whatever. So the ingredients are the key to every understanding. And the interesting thing is that if we look, for instance, at the first sign after the spring equinox, where we say Aries starts. So Aries, the beginning of spring, from that moment on we start, okay, this is now where Aries starts. And therefore Aries is the very first sign of the zodiac. And then later when the sun moves to the next sign, background, as I explained before, it goes to Taurus. And then it goes to Gemini. So what we now can see is because the major energy of Aries is the new beginning of a new cycle. Because spring starts, and not only a new season starts, but a whole new year starts. But simultaneously, if we look on a worldly level, from a point of correlation, when a baby is born, the moment it is out of the mother's womb, this is a brand new beginning too. But not every baby is born when the sun is in Aries. But the moment when the east horizon is somewhere at a point, in New York, let's say there would be a Capricorn rising, then the baby would have the sign of Capricorn on the east horizon, which defines the first 12th or the first house, the first segment. And that very first segment, the so-called first house, within itself, independent what kind of sign is at the east horizon, carries the same energy as the first sign of the big ingredients kitchen. So we could say the first sign, which is Aries, and anyone's first house is the same energy. Brand new beginning. But the one is the universal level, Aries, and the other thing is the personal or worldly or mundane level. Make sense? The same for the second. The second sign in the kitchen of God, meaning like Taurus, the second ingredients box, Taurus, correlates directly with the same archetypal keywords for anyone's second house. So everyone's second house within itself, independent from what sign is to be found on that background, as we say, house cusp, carries the same keywords as the second sign carries in the universal kitchen. But as astrologers, we have to discriminate using our left brain to say the one is the divine ingredients and the other is the personal, worldly, now comes the keyword, life area. So if we want to see how someone's physical body is, because the physical body is most important during birth, everyone checks, is the body okay? 5 fingers, blah, blah, blah. Then of course, someone who is born with a Capricorn rising, the physical body, which is like Aries, first house, has now the ingredients from God's Capricorn box. And we have to combine them, right? So that's the whole first trick, or that's the simplicity of learning astrology. So you don't have to read like books about houses and books about signs. If you understand the first sign is Aries, and on the worldly personal level, from the moment of being incarnated in a body, that sign on the first house, which starts with a so-called ascendant, is the same energies like Aries, but in combination with the sign on that ascendant, i.e. house cusp. If you get that into your brain, you have the easiest time, because you now need only one keyword for Capricorn, in that example, and one keyword for Aries. And you put them together, and then you make a meaningful statement. And you will be able to describe the physical, instinctual nature of that person whose chart you are examining. We'll get to that when we do meaningful sentences briefly. But it's quite simple. And then there's a third level, because the signs out in the night sky or in the sky in space, they cannot move. Meaning like Aries cannot say, hey, Cancer, who you are like 3 months away from me, I'm going to come and visit. Not possible. So we do have the planets. Planet, the word comes from the Greek word wandering. Not with an O, but with an A. So the planets are always like somewhere on a walk visiting. And so we can say we have the outer zodiac, the 12 signs. We have the individual house system relative to place and time of birth, which makes a difference, right? And we do have the planets. And the planets, relative to their distance to the center of our solar system, the sun, have different time of circling around the sun. And each planet is, so to speak, a ruler of at least one sign. So it is similar to every country having a president, or as Germany, a chancellor or whatever. Now I have to tuck my mouth. Or some other countries have a clown. Sorry. Sometimes my humor is just getting me. Sorry. So basically, let's say Germany with a chancellorship of like Mrs. Merkel. Mrs. Merkel is symbolizing Germany. Germany cannot come over to France. And when it did in history, it was not welcomed. It was not a good idea. Oh. But if Mrs. Merkel is visiting France or Canada or England, then the German representative, i.e. planet or planetary ruler, is now in another sign, in another cultural hemisphere. So if, for instance, the Venus is in Pisces, we have to use the archetypes. We have to first understand who or what sign does Venus rule, like Merkel does Germany. And then we need to know the archetypes of Pisces, which is the 12th sign of the zodiac. And of course, because it happens somewhere in a house, in what house? So every astrological horoscope is basically the 3 levels. The level of the zodiac, the 12 ingredients, which are always the same. Basically, you will learn the key words of everything in life, from the smallest to the biggest, from psychology, biochemistry, politics, money market. You can apply them everywhere. Then we have the next level, the wanderers, the transmitters, so to speak, the representatives, which are the planets. They are spinning in different speeds. As I mentioned before, Jupiter takes exactly 12 years to go one time around the sun. And we have the worldly level of an individual chart. So with these three levels, we can start to combine things. But before we do that, we of course need the keywords of each sign, the planet that rules over that sign, and the correlation to the house. Meaning, if we look at the fourth sign, which is Cancer, Cancer is ruled by the moon, and in any given horoscope, it correlates with a fourth house, meaning the deepest point of the chart, the IC, Imam Kuli. So if we want to see that, then we have to combine these three levels. But before we do that, and before we learn the keywords, we should do a brief understanding of why or what planet rules over what sign.
Free your mind.
Remember times without time.